We're going to be starting our studies on ancient China. So as you listen today, please make sure you listen to find out why the Yellow and the Yangtze rivers were so important to the ancient Chinese. The Tigris, the Euphrates, the Nile, the Indus, the Ganges. When you hear these names, what images do you see in your mind? Where have you heard these names before? What do they have in common? Right, they are all rivers. And what is special about these 5 rivers? That's right, these ancient rivers supplied the water needed for the world's very first civilizations. Along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates in ancient Mesopotamia, people worked together to grow food, build cities, and develop a way of writing. Pyramids were built up and down the Nile River in Egypt. And in Asia, the Indus and the Ganges, snaking their way through India and Pakistan, have long been worshipped for their life-giving waters. Today you are going to learn about the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, 2 more rivers that belong to this special group. These 2 rivers, divided by the high snow-capped Bayankala Mountains, and they are the 2 longest rivers in China. They too are places where early civilizations began. More people live in the Yellow and Yangtze River valleys today than in any other region on Earth. High up in the mountains where the Yellow River begins, its waters are very clear, but as it travels its long route through the high plateaus of the Bayankala Mountains, its color changes. Look at the picture and see if you can guess what makes the water turn yellow. Rain and wind wash the silt, which is a fine mixture of soil, sand, and clay, from the mountains into the river, making it a muddy yellow. As this happens, the river bottom rises. And if the river bottom rises, what do you think happens to the water in the river? It rises too. And then what happens? Right, the river overflows its banks, flooding the land on either side of it. Does this sound familiar? What other rivers have you learned about that flooded? Is this flooding good or bad? You have already learned the importance of flooding in creating fertile land for crops. But when large rivers like the Yellow River flood, they can also destroy whole cities. For this reason, the Chinese have given the Yellow River 2 nicknames, Mother River and China's Great Sorrow. So since sorrow is a feeling of deep sadness caused by the loss of something or someone, or by some disappointment, we can guess that the Yellow River, when it's called China's Great Sorrow, often causes China's people some sadness and pain when it floods. The Yangtze River, China's longest river, lies to the south of the Yellow River. There the temperature is much warmer and flooding is less of a problem. The Yangtze River is named after an ancient place that was near the river. Its fertile valley is sometimes called China's Rice Bowl because of its temperate climate. So a temperate climate is the type of weather that's neither really, really hot or really, really cold throughout the year. So it's perfect for growing rice. Wheat and millet used in making bread and noodles grow well along the Yellow River, but rice, the main crop of China, had its beginnings along the Yangtze. Together, these 2 river valleys form the country's greatest food-producing region. The Chinese have always been inventors. Many of their inventions changed the way people farmed, making the river valleys more and more productive. For example, the ancient Chinese invented seed planting. Instead of scattering seeds on top of the earth, they developed seed drills used for planting seeds in ordered rows. They invented iron plows and harnesses so that horses or oxen could easily pull the plows. And to get water from low ground to the crops planted on higher ground, the Chinese invented a pump to irrigate the fields. These inventions are still used today. Because they were inventive people, farming became easier for the Chinese people. More and more nomadic people, or people who have no set home and moved often to find food, they began to settle permanently along the banks of the two great rivers where food was abundant. Then the same thing happened in China that happened in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India. Cities emerged. Many separate cities and areas sprang up along the banks of the rivers, each led by a powerful king. The kings ruled over the people, much like the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. The people built walls, houses, and temples. They made tools and weapons of wood, stone, bronze, and iron. They also built boats. And with the invention of copper coins, they began to trade with one another up and down both rivers. As they traded and farmed, the Chinese continued inventing new tools and systems. One of these was writing, which you will soon learn about, an important trademark of any civilization. Okay, boys and girls, so we're going to do our notes now, so please get your fact files out, and you need this set of notes about geography and rivers of China. So I'd like you to open to the next blank page, and we're going to go ahead and glue this set of notes in. Again, as you guys are listening, if you need to pause, go ahead. Okay, so we're going to write a few notes down, and then we're also going to work in our map we had glued in earlier. So let's look at our notes. The first note we have is about the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River is the longest river in China. So we are going to write that the Yangtze River is the longest river in China. Now let's think about this next one. We heard in the read aloud that there was a very important crop that grows along the Yangtze River. Can you remember what that is? A very important crop is rice. Rice is one of the most important crops that grow along the Yangtze River. So here we're going to write rice, and we're going to capitalize it just because it happens to be at the beginning of this sentence. So rice. Next and last note we have is about the Yellow River. The Yellow River is named for the yellow sediment that floats in it. So the sediment is all that dirt and soil it talked about that came down from the mountains. So that is why it is called the Yellow River. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go back to the map we used and colored in earlier when we started talking about India. And you're going to need some crayons or colored pencils. So you're going to need a brown, blue, yellow, and red. Okay. So as the first thing we're going to do is we are going to outline China, the border. So starting up here, this is the border of China. And it hits here where India, Pakistan, okay. Then the Himalayan mountains, and then it goes down here. And then all of this along here is the Pacific Ocean. So, oops, and this guy up here. So that is the border of China. And we're going to label this China. Let's label it down here. We'll use my pencil. Let's label it actually right here. China is up here, and we'll label it down here too. So I had a capital letter. Okay. So next, we're going to use our brown again, and we're going to go over these mountains again. These are carrots. They're called carrots. So if you'd go over those with your brown crayon or colored pencil. And again, if you need to pause this, you go right ahead and pause it. And then these are the mountains that our Read Aloud talked about, the Bayankalis Mountains. So we're going to write that up here. Bayankalas. Okay, so we had the Himalayas here, and now we have the Bayankalas here. All right, then, again, if you need to pause, go ahead. We're going to use our yellow, and we are going to outline the Yellow River, which starts up in here. Kind of hard to see because of the mountains, but it goes along here. But this is the Yellow River. It empties there into the ocean. We're going to label that Yellow River. If you're trying to label and label small, and I know it's hard, make sure you have a good sharp pencil. That helps. Okay, so that's the Yellow River. That's the one with the yellow sediment in it. And then we have the Yangtze River. We're going to outline or go over in blue. And it is the longest river in China. We're going to label that Yangtze. Yangtze is a little bit hard to spell. So its full name is Yangtze River. So capital Y-A-N-G, Yang. And then this part doesn't play fair at all. T-Z-E. And then R-I-B-E-R. Again, if you need to pause and get that, but we capitalize both Yangtze and river because that's its full name. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to put some dots around with our red just to represent the cities that sprang up along the sides of these rivers. These aren't precisely where cities sprung up, but along these rivers is where many cities formed and where civilizations formed, because the rivers give them the water they need in order to live. Okay, so when you are done with that, you are done with your notes for today.